Hello everyone, welcome to part 4 of the campaign of Doom, where today we are going to be playing the Long Drawn Death against the Mysteries of the Dark. Now these groups you'll recognise in the first and second game were the ones that lost that particular game. So we're going to actually just play them off against each other and see how they get on. Now as it stands with my opponent's side, it is 96 points, but one of their models does have a skill, so that actually puts them up to 98 for their fighting group strength, whereas my side, the Mysteries of the Dark, is sitting at 92 fighting group strength. So it's quite close. There's only a few points in it, so we're just going to play the groups as they are. And also on top of that, we're actually going to play the cornered scenario, which is a very different layout rather than just the usual facing off against each other. But we'll show you that once we have set up the models. For the Long Drawn Death, we have an Alchemist with dagger, Apprentice with staff, two Markspersons with bow and dagger, 2 cultists. However, this cultist here with the bludgeon that's running has both +1 to their damage from their skill, but -1 resistance from my opponent's rolls in the previous game. And then just on the end here, this is actually a fanatic model who has the axe that was taken from the cultist that died in the last game. As for the Mysteries of the Dark, we have an Alchemist with a staff, an Apprentice with 2 daggers, a Thief with a dagger, an ex-soldier with a great weapon, a Marksperson with crossbow and basic weapon on his back there, and finally the Marksperson with a bow and dagger. As we can see, that is both sides deployed. Now, I won the roll-off, so I am in the centre, within 4 inches of the centre of the board here. As for my opponent, they have made a bit of a scattered deployment on one guy coming up on this side, 2 over at the back here, Alchemist and Cultist running up over on this side. This is the Cultist with the extra damage and the -1 resistance. And then finally, Apprentice and Marksperson over there. Before we start, in the previous game, I rolled for my exploration and I got Shadow Strike. So I now get to pick a model on my opponent's side and allocate a wound to them, or they take a wound. So this Fanatic is going to take a wound before the game begins. For my opponent, they didn't actually roll anything other than just the 7 when it was their game, so they don't get any special abilities. Start of turn 1, I'll roll for initiative first. I get a 1, my opponent gets a 6, so they'll be going first, and I'll go second with a reaction token. Here we are at the end of turn 1's movement phase. So my opponent has moved up this way with a couple of models over here. I've moved up to capitalise onto this bridge with my opponent on the other side. The rest of my models have moved up straight away over this way. And then my opponent has sort of filled up into this building here. And finally, their Fanatic over here is just bringing up the side. First bit of shooting from my opponent is this Marksperson is going to fire up at my Apprentice. Now we've worked out it is movement and hard cover. So it's going to be a 6 to hit in this case. It's a hit, rolling to wound, damage 3, resistance 3.
Ooh.
It's also another 6, so I take 2 wounds straight off the bat. Next bit of shooting from my opponent, this Marksperson, into my Thief, who's actually in the open, if we measure it properly. So they're looking at a 4 because they moved. No, they can reroll that for being a Marksperson, which is a hit, looking to roll to wound. And they don't get a wound. Last bit from my opponent, this Alchemist is going to throw the Snake Venom Dart, which they've got 1 of, into my ex-soldier. Only penalty is they moved, so it's going to be a 3 to hit. For my first bit of shooting, this Marksperson with a crossbow is going to shoot into this cultist over here. I'm looking at a 3 to hit, which goes down to a 5 to hit because he's moved with a crossbow, but back to a 4 to hit because I'm within 4 inches. Nope, that's not enough. However, while we're here, this Marksperson here is going to fire their bow into them. They will actually need a 3 because it will cancel out the move penalty that they will have. That's a hit. Damage 3, he is resistance 2. That is enough to cause a single wound, so my opponent will, I'll get 1 for them, he will take a wound there. Last bit for me, Piercing Stiletto, I have 3 of them, is going to come from this Apprentice into this 1 wound model over here. it goes off, and that means that they take another wound. As we come into the combat phase for turn 1, first bit from my opponent, Alchemist into my Marksperson with a crossbow and basic weapon, and they'll be getting to attack first, hitting on a 3 with their dagger, which doesn't hit. I will hit with my sword on, or my basic weapon, on a 4, which also doesn't hit, which means that I'm the one who's going to be running away, which I do. However, as I've discussed with my opponent, I actually can't go anywhere because of where I'm stood and the surrounding models, so they're going to have to roll a d6 and see what they roll to see how many inches they get to move. 3, so they can now move 3 inches, which I'm guessing is, yeah, because they're going to get away from my ex-soldier. Next, my opponent was about to charge this cultist into my Marksperson, but actually I'm going to react, and I'm going to fight or flight my way into contact with them first. So I have 1 attack with my dagger, hitting on a 4, which hits. It would normally be a bit weak here, but damage 2, he is resistance 2, so this is a basic weapon, essentially, attacking in here. And that is enough to score a wound and take the cultist out of the game. Next, I'm going to roll and see where I get to go with 5 inches. I'm actually going to go like that and go there. Coming into my half of the combat phase, this Marksperson is actually going to run down and charge into the into the Alchemist, but they're going to do it by coming down and around and lapping into them like this. This is so when they disengage, if they lose, they can only come back this way or go up the stairs. 1 attack, hitting on a 4 with my basic weapon. That's a hit. Rolling to wound, we're looking at a damage 3, resistance 3. Ooh, that's a critical wound on the Alchemist. So he's going to be losing this fight no matter what. We're looking at rolling to hit with a 3+.
1.
Which unfortunately doesn't hit, as my opponent has just informed me. So they're now looking to back away, which will also be on a 2+ in this case.
1.
Okay, I'll roll to hit again, looking for a fail. So my opponent gets to roll to back away.
Nope.
Okay. I hit. I do get a regular wound, so they're down to 1 wound remaining. And my opponent gets one more attempt to back away. Which they do. So they're gonna, I will, hang on 1 second. They're gonna back away 2 inches like so. And then I'm gonna go, ooh, keep knocking these over. 2 inches myself, so I'm gonna come up this way, like this. Okay, for the last bit, for possibly the last bit of charging on my end, this apprentice is going to use her 2 daggers, run down the stairs and into combat with my opponent's Alchemist. So we're going to look and see what happens here. I have 2 attacks, hitting on 3s. That is 1 hit, and it's damage 2 for the dagger, resistance 3. No, I failed to wound. My opponent attacks back with 1, hitting on a 3. Looking for a 5 or 6 to get that wound. No, they back away on a 2+, which, as much as they're destroying these barricades, they do. So they're going to back away 2 inches like so. And then I'm going to roll a 4, and I'm going to use that to go. And actually, I'm just going to have to stand there because there's not really anywhere else I can go. We have now come to the end of turn 1, possibly the most brutal turn 1 I have seen in this game in a long time, with this swirling melee over here. Join us as we actually head into turn 2 to see what happens. Start of turn 2, my opponent has no determination or any rolls to take, and neither do I, so we'll roll for initiative. They get a 6. I get a 2, so they'll be going first, and I will get 2 reaction tokens. End of turn 2 movement phase. I have decided over here, my opponent didn't move, and I didn't move my shooting models, but I did move my apprentice just a little bit so she can get some more cover. Then my opponent brought Marksperson and Apprentice up onto here. And then finally over here we have my Alchemist. My opponent's Cultist and Marksperson have moved over this way. My ex-soldier has moved up to here. My thief is hiding down there, and finally my opponent's fanatic has readied himself over here. Coming up into the shooting phase, I am going to react with my Alchemist because my opponent has chosen this Marksperson to shoot at them. Now, the main reason I'm doing this is simply so I can get away from that ledge. It means I sacrifice my Alchemy from him, but oh well. My opponent will hit on a 4. They do. Damage 3, resistance 3. They get a wound on me, so I'll take one there, but I'm now no longer within an inch to actually be able to fall. Next bit from my opponent is going to be Clouded Poison Globe right there in the middle. They're not really fussed about it hitting their Alchemist at this point. It goes off on a 3+, however. And my opponent has rolled exactly what they need, so we've already really pre-measured this up because it's a bit obvious. So 1, 2, 3, 4 models will all be fleck encounters everywhere here. All of these models here will be poisoned for the rest of the game. Last bit of shooting from my opponent. Marksperson into ex-soldier. It is within 12, but there is soft cover coming from this. It's at quite an angle. And they have moves, so they're going to be hitting on a 5. Let's see what they get. Ooh, just below, but that's okay. First bit for my shooting. This Marksperson here with the crossbow is going to fire into my opponent's Alchemist. He'll be hitting on a 2 because I haven't moved and I am within 4 inches. So I hit. Damage 4, resistance 3, so I'm looking at a 3 or more to get the wound. I do, so that will be the last wound on the Alchemist, and he is unfortunately removed from play. Next bit, this Marksperson is going to fire over at this cultist. It's going to be a -1 to hit because of long range, but I've got clear line of sight to him, and I also haven't moved, so let's roll and see what I get. It's a 6, so that's a hit, and I'm looking at damage 3, resistance 3. So I get a 5, so he will take a single wound. First bit of combat for my opponent, Alchemist. No, not an Alchemist, that's a Fanatic. Keep reusing these models. Fanatic is going to charge into my ex-soldier, which they can indeed do. Like so. They have 1 attack, which will be hitting on a 4, but they've made the charge, so they can reroll this if they fail. Reroll. He hits. Damage 4, resistance 4. So let's see what they get to wound. That's a wound. However, I'm an ex-soldier, so I don't take a wound. Now it's my turn. 1 attack, hitting on a 3. It hits. Looking to damage. Oh, damage 6, resistance 3. That would go up to a 6 with the 3 difference, and that is 2 wounds on him, meaning he is removed from play. And then I'll roll my d6. 5 inches. I'm gonna go to there. My opponent is next going to charge this cultist into my ex-soldier. I'm guessing they're going to go straight in to try and push me back. Actually, there, so they can cape away from the edge, but I'm on the edge. Looking at a 4 to hit, but rerolling 1s because they made the charge. No, I'm guessing that is a 2 as I can see. So I'm going to roll into the same area looking for a 3 to hit. No, I get a 1, so I'm actually the one losing here. On a 3+, I do back away. So I'm going to have to back away like this. And my opponent's going to roll, see where they go. 5 inches. So we'll come back to you once they've decided. And there is where my opponent has decided to end up. First of, and well, I say first, only of my charges, ex-soldier, right into my opponent's cultist. I have 1 attack, hitting on a 3. No, that's a 1. My opponent has 1 attack back, hitting on a 4, which they do. Damage 4, resistance 4, which they get a wound, and on a 3+, I'm okay, so I don't fall into that hole, but I do take a wound. I don't fall off the side of that ledge. However, I now need to roll a 3+ to see if I run away, which I don't. So my opponent...
6+?
That's a good point. 6+ to see if I ignore the wound. No, I don't. So my opponent gets another 3 rounds of attacks against me. Eventually we'll get it right. Hits, roll into wound. Ooh, they get another wound on me. Do I ignore it? No. Do I fall down the hole? No, I'm okay. I say that, I am currently on 1 wound remaining. And I don't escape, so my opponent gets 1 more attack against me. Let's see what happens. They hit. 50-50 here. No, they don't. And I get away, so I'm going to hop back like so. And then my opponent is going to roll a dice and see what they get. A 3, so we'll work out where they want to go. And so they've decided to stay put. That is the end of the combat phase for turn 2, and that is also the end of turn 2. Join us as we will head on into turn 3. Start of turn 3, very first thing we actually have to do is the poison here for these models, because it is listed as the first thing you would do in a turn. So for the Marksperson with a bow, he's okay. Crossbow Marksperson. He is not okay. And then for the Apprentice, she's okay as well. My opponent needing 1 or 2 there to inflict a wound. Next we roll on to Determination. For my opponent, they're going to have to roll 2 dice here and pick the worst because their Alchemist has been removed. Ooh, unfortunately they do fail, and on a quick scan of the board, it means it is this poor cultist over here who is removed, as he is the only wounded model. In what possibly might be the shortest game we have played on this channel so thus far, my opponent now needs to roll for their pluck test, which comes after the determination. They have 4 models removed and have 3 remaining on the table. If they roll above the number of models removed, they will fail pluck and run away. Sorry, above the number of models on the table, so there's 3 on the table. They will fail their pluck test and run away. On top of that, the Alchemist has been removed, so it is a roll 2 dice, pick the highest situation here. No, my opponent has actually passed their pluck test, meaning that they are still in the game. After all of that, turn 3 initiative. My opponent gets a 1. I get a 5. Are we going first? And they'll be getting 2 reaction tokens. End of turn 3. My opponent doesn't have much left on the board, but they have moved up and around, with the Marksperson heading up over this way, Apprentice heading up over this way, my models scattering themselves around this side of the board here, my Thief staying down there, my Ex-Soldier coming up here, and my opponent bearing down on my Ex-Soldier with at least 2 shooting models. For me, first bit of shooting is going to be this Marksperson into this Apprentice. It's going to be a 5 to hit because I have moved. Nope. And then while we're here, a 6 from this Marksperson to this Apprentice. He gets it, and he gets a single wound on the Apprentice, but he is not near enough that he can actually fall off anything. So that's it. That's the end of my shooting. For my opponent, very first bit of shooting, this Marksperson into this Ex-Soldier. They have not moved, so they'll be hitting on a 2. Rerolling 1s for being a Marksperson. They've hit. Looking at a 5 or 6 to wound, damage 3, resistance 4. That is a wound. I can ignore it on a 6. And that's the complete blooming opposite of a 6. I am gone. Last bit of shooting from my opponent, because there's no more alchemy. Marksperson into my Marksperson. With long range, cover, and moved makes it a 6 to hit. So we're going to have them roll, see what they get. No, unfortunately they miss. For charging, I'm in the combat phase. I'm not going to charge anyone. There is no models in a position where I really want to charge them and force more combats. So my opponent is going to charge a blind charge here from their Apprentice into my Apprentice. They're looking at a 3 or more for their intelligence. And, oh god, they have rolled absolutely perfectly high enough. So they're going to run around like so and smash into them. They have 1 attack hitting on a 3 with their staff. That's a hit. They're looking for a 5 or 6 to wound because it's damage 2, resistance 3. No, I have 2 attacks hitting on 3s. Well, that was useless. I'm going to try and back away on a 3+, which I do. So I'm going to hop up there like so. And my opponent is going to roll to see where they go. 4 inches. So... oh, no, they've already decided they're going to go back to where they charged around from. That makes sense. That marks the end of turn 3, so we are about to go into turn 4, where we will do all the poison, pluck test and determination, and we will see what happens. Start of turn 4, my opponent is going to roll for poison, so we're going to start with this apprentice here on 1 or 2. Oh, she's okay. On this Marksperson, 1 or 2. No, and this Marksperson hiding over here at the back, he does take a wound. It really seems to not be my opponent's day with these rolls. Next we come to determination for turn 4. My opponent is going to roll, see what they get. Okay, they don't fail the determination roll, so all their models are staying. However, while we're here, let us also do the pluck test, which again, they have 3 models on the table. Oh, even one of those is enough. So my opponent has rolled 4 when they have 3 models on the table, which is above the number of remaining models. That means my opponent runs away, and we will tot up these scores and let you know. With that, we have removed my opponent's models from the board, leaving only my models behind. As we can see, I ended the game with 5 models on the table. Now, the rule for this mission is that for every model my opponent, who start at the edges, takes off, they get 3 coins, so they've got 3, and I get 3 for every model that I still have on the board at the end of the game. So in this case, I will get 15 because I have 5 models remaining. I'll also get an extra d6 because my opponent failed their pluck test, and if a pluck test is failed, there's an additional d6 to be gained for the other player. We will quickly go into the end game and the wrap up just now. And there we have it. That is the end of the 4th battle report in the campaign of Doom. As you can see, it really did not go well for my opponent. However, as normal, we will be putting up the post-game for this campaign game on the Patreon. For those who have access to all the tiers in Patreon will get to see the post-game video. For those of you who are not a patron and want to get access to this video and more additional content, you can join at the Scoundrel tier for £2 per month. If you want access to the rules, campaign rules, and various other items that allow you to play the game as well, that is the Novice tier for £4. Finally, the Local Hero tier for £6 will get you all of the stuff in the other tiers. It will also get you early access to rules, it will also get you early access to model sneak peeks, ideas, and it will actually also allow you to add your name into the hat, which we will give to some of the models in this game. So you can actually have a named character model that you can essentially follow throughout the next campaign that we do. If that interests you, go down the link below to the Patreon link and sign up for whichever tier you're interested in. All that remains for me to say is thank you very much for watching. Patrons, we will see you at some point during the week. Everyone else, we will see you next weekend for part 5 of the campaign of Doom. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.